Hello, I'm Mike McCauley, the head of marketing at Vixxo, and I'm excited to be hosting this innovation forum where we're going to be talking about Imagineering your store to create an intentional customer experience. When I think about Imagineering, it's one of those things that obviously it brings up different terms and connotations and images and whatnot. But one of the things that comes to mind first is just what they do at Disney World, the way they just imagine and they engineer to meet that. And so along those lines, I couldn't be more excited to welcome two guests today to this talk, Brian Roderman and Sumit Kaur. Brian's the president, founder, and chief innovation officer of Into Innovation, which is an experience innovation design agency. Brian's motivated by the passion to create an experience people cannot live without. He's worked in the design consultant businesses for over 30 years and is frequently a featured speaker on design and innovation at events and symposiums worldwide. Sumit Kaur is joining us today. He is an operations leader at Vixxo with specific domain expertise around convenience stores, restaurants, and other retailers. He has over 25 years of experience in operations management around the world, specifically including 15 years of multi-unit restaurant operations experience, as well as 5 years in niche consulting skills. His experience from restaurant operations and facility management allows him to be able to partner with clients to be able to create the ultimate experience that they want and the performance that they're looking for in their stores to deliver on their brand promises to their customers. Brian and Sumit, it's great to have you guys here today. And without further ado, let's just go on and get into this. So when you guys think about Imagineering your store to create an intentional customer experience, what comes to mind? When you think about Imagineering, Brian specifically, could you just kind of give us a quick intro?
Well, thanks, Mike, and it's a real pleasure to be here. And I have to say, I do love this topic as well, because when we talk about Imagineering, obviously this is linked very much to the vision of Walt Disney and what he did to create the wonderful world of Disney as we know it today. I think that when we think about how that magic is created, right, we go back to the foundation of what Disney set out to do with, let's just say, his theme parks, outside of all the other entertainment that he's been involved in or was involved in his lifetime. But I think when we talk about Imagineering, we talk about how to create an environment where people have a clean and just a nice, thoughtful experience. And it's something that they remember and they are willing and want to come back to again. So that's the part of what we really talk about when we talk about creating that. We have to intentionally create an experience that people remember, because there's so much competition in the world. We've got to really fight for that opportunity for people to want to return back to our brand, or back to, in this case, our retail environment.
Absolutely. Sumit, when I think about creating that retail environment that people want and being able to deliver on that promise, what comes to mind to you when you're thinking about each individual having their own experience, right, and getting the basics right? Where does that start?
So thank you, Mike, and it's a great pleasure to be here. So honestly, from the convenience store industry that I'll be speaking to, they've had to do a lot of things differently, right? So going back to it, they have to think big, they have to think different, they have to think outside of the box. And it's a very, very discriminating customer today. It's not your mom and pop convenience store anymore. It is not the traditional grab and go thought that we had 10 years ago, where folks would just dart in and dart out, right? We want the customers to be shopping more. We want them to be spending more time in the stores. But fundamentally, the basics are still the same, right? You have to give the consumer a good, clean environment, a safe environment, with a breadth of offerings, right? The discriminating customer today wants more. They want different. So there has to be an expanded selection of offerings. The equipment obviously has to be running, because if the equipment is not running, there is no ability to generate revenue. So the marketplace is shifting, but the convenience store industry is obviously shifting as well to mirror the needs of the customers, right? The customers tell us what they want, right? And we have to react to that, even though it might be kind of getting outside of the confines of what we're used to, the traditional C-store vertical that we think about, it's changing, right? It feels different, it smells different, it looks different today. And so Imagineering this to give the customer what they want in the way that they want it is really critical from a deliverable perspective.
You know, Sumit, along those lines, it's interesting. I was listening to one of the talks from the top recently from Casey's, and they when they talk about their clientele, they don't refer to them as customers anymore. They refer to them as guests, right? And it's
which is exactly
what
exactly as Disney refers to theirs, right?
Yeah, and so take it from there, Brian. I mean, when you think about a guest and taking care of them and welcoming them to your home, what comes to mind?
Well, I think, we go back to the foundation of what an experience is. And when we're talking about designing experiences and looking at how, again, humans want to interact with someone or something or someplace, what we really have is we have the way that we receive experiences, and that's really through our senses, how we taste, touch, smell, feel in that environment. And I think when you start breaking it down and you start looking at all those things, one thing that I really like about retail environments, especially like convenience store environments, even though maybe like a convenience store has a pretty small footprint, you can really appeal to many, if not all, the senses in that environment, right? You can think about the lovely smells of the food, or the smell of clean, right? We know what that smells like in, say, the restrooms and facilities there. We know what from what you see. Obviously, we can very much control that, and that's, again, when you talk about Imagineering, right? That's where someone like Disney was superb at knowing what you look at, when you look at it, how you look at it, and this goes everything from the materials, the selections of how the architecture and the places is constructed, as well as the lighting, obviously what you hear. The sounds, not only the other guest in this case in the environment, but also obviously those that are responsible for working within the environment, and then obviously the ambient signs that you want to control. All those things, you start breaking them down, you can kind of start to see all the different ways you can design and enhance the experience when you really start working through the different senses as filters.
Absolutely, I like that. So Sumit, one of the things that also comes up, right, is that the store's not, it doesn't stop at the curb anymore, right? It doesn't stop at the door, and it doesn't stop at the curb. Some of the things that have happened with the whole notion of COVID and whatnot are different introductions around curbside pickup, in-store grab and go. What are different ways that you see this space, this retail space, pivoting and changing to meet the needs of customers as we go forward?
So great point, Mike. Obviously, COVID has changed the way that business is conducted today, but the convenience industry has really reacted very positively. So obviously now convenience stores are offering curbside pickup, something that they've had to do because the foot traffic into the stores have decreased. There's also the renewed focus on loyalty programs. So 7-Eleven, for example, has a loyalty program, the 7 Rewards program, that has 35 million users. Almost 1 in 10 Americans are on the 7-Eleven app. Now, once you're on the 7-Eleven app, you can order online and delivery comes to your doorstep, right? So it's not just a traditional way of buying product anymore. It's offering different ways that consumers can receive it. And so obviously delivery platforms are changing. It's not just a walk in and walk out anymore. And going back to some of the design things that have happened in the convenience industry, we see a lot of change, right? We see brighter stores, for example, the use of LEDs, more floor-to-ceiling windows to allow the natural light to come in, redesigning of the beer caves, right? Historically, a beer cave was just a walk-in cooler with an open door, and you walked up and you picked up beer. Now it's an entire section of the store which seems less cramped, more open and airy. The combination of wood being incorporated into the design concept, right? Wood, stainless steel, this is kind of this new and old kind of perfect blend that stimulates the senses. Even something basic like restrooms, right? When you go into stores now and you go into restaurants or you go into convenience stores, you go into the restroom and you see more trough-like sinks, right? Where multiple people can use the sinks as opposed to one. And in between the sinks, you'll see paper towel holders, right? So that you're not walking, you're not washing your hands and then tripping your hands across to get the paper towels, right? So these are simple things, but very functional in the industry today, and things that the owners are really taking a look at. How do we change the shopping experience? It's got to feel different. It's got to feel better. They've got to wow the customer. But it's these small things, right? Incremental things that all add up to giving the guest, the customer, a different shopping experience than they're used to.
I love that. I love that, Sumit. As a matter of fact, one of the things, the sayings that I think Brian taught me a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, when we first started engaging him in this space and looking at, the forecourt and how that works with, in the store and how they interact together, is dream big, start small, right? It's do something today to make a positive experience for your guest, right? Or for your customer. Brian, along those lines, when we think about dreaming big and whatnot, how can people start acting on this, right? What are things that people want today and you think that they're going to continue to want as they go forward?
Well, Mike, you just struck a magic chord there. When it comes to what the true user wants are, right? We can all recite our expertise and what we've learned over the years, right? But I've come to learn in the consultancy space, right? When we're talking about designing experiences, as much as we know, we're still not the expert. The guest, the consumer, the user of that opportunity is the expert. And the easiest thing you can do is just ask, right? Don't be afraid to ask, because the great news is if you ask them, they'll talk to you, they'll tell you. And the beautiful thing about retail environments, and again, especially convenience stores, is you have the guests all the time. They're always coming to you, right? It's not like you have to go get them. They're coming to you. You have opportunities there where you can talk with them. And I'm not talking about traditional surveys like can we catch you, answer this off your receipt, or can we get to you via email. I'm talking about true one-to-one dialogue, in-person conversations. What can we do for you? What would you like to see us do for you? Give them a $5 gift card to your store. Tell them you buy them a tank of gas. That information may be priceless in exchange, because if you get enough people to tell you, and you don't need hundreds, just a couple dozen will do. You'll go, wow, you know what? That's really great insights. I can do something with that. And just as you said, right, the dream big, start small. It may be something as simple as moving the trash cans to a different location, right? Because maybe they want them out of sight, or they want them to be more accessible, whatever that might be. More recycling bins, whatever it might be. You're like, wow, I thought I knew, but thank goodness I asked, because they're going to tell you. And then you'll start seeing the more disruptive ideas start to come along too, as the more you talk to them, and the more you chat with them, the more you'll see the opportunities to dream even larger and even bigger.
Sumit, real quick, before we wrap up with this section and start talking about winning the customer's trust in a world of germs, there were some fun facts that you had introduced, when we were talking offline around just the notion of, curbside pickup, customer engagement kiosks, right? Frictionless, touchless, and then the people who buy gas and buy beverage, right? As far as the correlation that's there. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, people have to get gas, right? They're going to get gas, whether it's convenience store A or store B. The question is obviously, where are they going to go? So the most important thing as far as fuel is concerned is that it has to be a seamless transaction, right? You have to have your dispensers working. Bagged off fuel dispensers send a really negative message to the customer, and they're probably not going to come back if they have to wait in line, because you have 8 out of 12 dispensers are bagged off. But there's a huge correlation between fuel sales and really the inside sales, which is what drives the profitability of the stores. 60% of all consumers that get gas actually come into the retail space and buy a beverage. Now, not just any product, they actually come in and buy a beverage, and beverages carry the highest margin, right? So it is incumbent upon the store, first of all, to make sure that the gas is selling, and then once they come into the store, you have to have the products that you know they're going to walk in. 6 out of 10 folks are going to walk in and get a beverage, but the equipment has to be running, right? The beer vault has to be at the right temperature. The Slurpees have to be working. The fountain machines have to be working. And so it's incumbent upon facilities to make sure that the equipment is running. Fuel does its job, right? Fuel is going to do its job. If it's run correctly, people are going to come and get gas, and 6 out of 10 folks are going to come in. Now, the question is what happens then, right? That's when the shopping experience begins. And is the store visually stimulating? Does it make sense? Is the temperature comfortable? Does it feel nice? Does it feel clean? Does it smell clean, right? All of those things stimulate the buying experience. But knowing that 6 out of 10 folks are coming in to buy something, you have to be able to deliver on the promise, right? So that it's really important from a facilities perspective that the equipment is running, all of it, not just 50%, but all of it.
I love that. And, along those lines, I was thinking back several years ago when I was watching a special around design thinking and in creating intentional designs, that BMW had sound engineers, right? And they would design the specific ding that you would hear when you walk into a car or when you would open the car door, because they needed that to represent that brand. I think it's important, right, that we realize as we go forward that consumers don't change that expectation when they transition from buying a car to walking into a store, right? And Brian, with the advent of the pandemic, right? One of the things that's happening now is we've got to win that customer's trust in a totally different way. We've got to win their trust in a world of germs, right? So yeah. I know people have done a tremendous amount of work around, frictionless, contactless, and focusing on clean. What are some things that operators should keep in mind and think about, right, in creating an experience in a world of germs?
Well, if I can, I'll build on what Sumit just mentioned about the whole fuel to beverage connection. I mean, let's start off with absolutely. We know that the content, the delivery of the goods and services, obviously, are significant. But let's make sure those fuel dispensers are clean to start with, right? Let's make sure that you are seen visibly wiping them down to guests, and that they are staying clean. That the nozzle handles are wiped down. That you're doing everything you can do to make sure that you are inviting them into the environment and that you're taking on the responsibility so they don't have to. If they feel like they have to go that extra distance, they're going to start questioning their experience. That's going to minimize trust. You might not get them in the store if you can't get them past that moment where they're like, well, I'm not sure if I want to enter. I think I'm just going to stay out here and get back in my car and drive away. We're so close, right, to getting them to participate and go further into the experience. Let's make sure that we make it easy for them to do that. So that's one, right? As we move back in, as we work our way into the environment, into the store, obviously, let's start with the restrooms, right? Just as the fuel dispensers need to be clean, we need to experience that same reality in the restrooms, right? There are also new little devices that are coming out, like little foot grips, right, that you can attach to the bottom of doors, for example, so that you can, if you do still have, doors that enter into your restroom facilities, you at least now can use your foot and not your hands. All those little kind of opportunities, when you think about the entire, we call it customer journey mapping. When you mentioned design thinking, Mike, right? We map the journey of the customer and every step and everything they do, from going in and coming back out. And you can look at each one of those steps and go, what can we do to minimize basically friction or to reduce complexity in the scenario? Under the COVID conditions or the pandemic, right, we know that a lot of that has to do with just their sensitivity to touch, right? And so what are all the things they're touching? and where are all the things we need to look on how we can resolve each one of those touch points along the path.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Brian. And one of the other things that's coming out of this, to your point, is the whole notion that people are finding out they don't have to go into the store anymore, right? They can buy, right? That's the whole point of the curbside pickup or the fuel delivery, right? Or delivery to the fuel island, right?
It'd be great if they delivered it to my garage, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. Go for it, Sumit.
Yeah, cleanliness and sanitation right now is top of mind, and I don't think that is going to change anytime in the near future. But when you walk in any place, this is human tendency. You're going to look up and you're going to look down, right? And that's kind of where it starts, right? So you want the ceiling to be clean, the air filters to be clean, the floor to be mopped. Obviously, those are just normal things, but it's even top of mind now, right? You don't want to look up and see dust bunnies in the air filters, for example. But the convenience industry, I think literally any convenience store you walk into today has plexiglass shields by the cash registers, right, to provide protection. You will see now as you walk in, maybe the inventory is not as much, but more select, but there's wider spaces between the aisles, right? We're opening it up so to minimize foot traffic. Directional signs, kind of one way in and one way out. To Brian's point around the restrooms, right? A lot of testing going on around touchless flushing, for example, right? Using touchless flushes. So use of hand dryers as opposed to paper towels. All of these are reactions, but certainly very positive things that the industry is doing to make the customer feel safe, to make the customer feel comfortable. When they walk in, they've got to see clean, it's got to look clean, but they've got to feel safe. And the industry's done a good job in a short period of time, in the last 9 months, to have pivoted to all of these different things, very functional things, but so important for the mindset of the consumer, for the end user, the guest, right? They have to feel like they're walking into a safe environment.
Yeah, and if I can build on that real quickly, Sumit, I think, let's admit, there's very few things we could probably acknowledge that are good coming from a pandemic, right? Like COVID. But interestingly enough, you can look at things and go, well, that actually is an improvement, right? When it comes back to the experience that people are having, and again, Imagineering a new space. I think everybody would agree that, how could we not want a cleaner environment to go into, right? How could we not want these things to be enhanced for us as a guest or as a consumer? And so, while again, we don't really call out the pandemic as a benefit to anyone, there are things that come from it that really can, again, enhance an engagement.
I love that. I love it. So one of the other things, right, when we were talking about Imagineering and winning customers' trust, right, is if we go back to Disney, you think about, it's a small world after all, and you've got these different world experiences in a.
Now you got that song in my head there, Mike.
Yeah, right. You've got such a smaller footprint in some of these stores, right? But we're also finding that they're creating, taquerias and beer bars, right, and wine bars and things like that in the store itself, right? Completely just reinventing the store. So, what do you guys think of? Or is it the first impressions that matter, right? And then also, how do you flip the bit in order to help people understand that it is safe and it's a good place to be?
Well, Mike, to your point, they have to feel safe, right? But they have to do things differently. And within a 2,500 square foot box, the convenience industry is really creating separate experiences within that space, right? They have a dedicated beverage area now. They have a dedicated high-end wine and beer selection area. They have beer on tap. A lot of convenience stores now have taquerias on site. And you can go from one section to the next, and you can smell the coffee in the coffee section, which, by the way, no longer is just regular coffee and decaf. There's 10 kinds of coffee, but you can smell the fresh roasted beans. And then literally 15 feet away, you can go and you can experience beer on tap, and then walk down a little bit further and there's a full-fledged taqueria. And you go from one area to the next, and the senses are completely different, right? You don't smell the taqueria on the beer area, and you don't smell the coffee beans in the beverage area. So the industry has really revolutionized trying to reach the senses, something that we've spoken about, and give us all different experiences within an enclosed space. And the breadth of choices that we have now in the industry is just phenomenal. I mean, just on the coffee section, in a lot of these stores now you have 10 different kinds of coffee, right? So you could walk, get your coffee, smell the coffee beans, and literally walk down to the taqueria and get some tacos. Whole different experience. So yeah, I mean, they've had to do things differently, but it's really designed to give the end user that unique experience in that small space within a 25 to a 3,000 square foot box.
I love it. I love it. And it's interesting because when you talk about creating that unique experience, the whole reason that you create that unique experience, obviously it's to develop their trust and whatnot, but it's also about winning that zero moment of truth, right? That moment when they actually make the purchase decision and put the item in their proverbial basket, so to speak, or in their hand. Brian, along those lines, how do you think, if you look at that and you map that journey out, right? How do you use facilities to help win that zero moment of truth?
Oh my gosh, Mike, what a great question. I can tell you that I've done some work in some of the big box retailers, especially in the areas of like, say, Home Depot, Lowe's, that type of thing. And when we studied it, we found that there were 8 specific decision points that get made, or basically different, I would say, stages that a consumer goes through from the moment they're entering into the environment, right? And I'm talking about kind of basically from outside the store in, to the point where they actually get to that zero moment of truth, where they actually put that item, they've made the choice that they're going to buy that, and they put it in the basket. Those are 8 stages that you have to win them at each stage. So there's a lot of distraction and a lot of noise in between, right? That entry point to the decision point. And so again, just when we talk about the journey map of the consumer, along those, there's also kind of a matrix of what are those points they make. An example would be here, right? Yes, I'm going to go into the store. Yes, I'm going to go to this aisle. Yes, I'm going to go to this shelf. Yes, I'm going to go to this peg hook. Yes, I'm going to go to this product on this peg hook, right? Each one of those, there's so much distraction, and we know that we work so hard to put so much content or so much product offering in such little space. That's a lot of noise and a lot of distraction that can happen to one, and somebody can get it's like the old dog squirrel trick, right? Squirrel. Next thing you know, you're onto something different, and you missed, right? As a brand, someone may have missed the opportunity to provide that product to the consumer at that point because they got distracted and went somewhere else. Yeah. So those are the things we really need to think about, is all those stages that they go through. And each one of those stages we have to win at and get them to the next one. It goes back to everything Sumit said, right? We have to make sure the lighting is good, right? We have to make sure that the tile looks great and the shelving is correct and that it's properly stocked, right? Things aren't in their way. There's not too many things that are hanging down that can keep me from getting to my end goal. All those things are part of the experience.
I love that. And, along those lines, if we piggyback on that, right, one of the things that I think you were saying at one point also is it's not necessarily about the brand as much now as it is about being a trusted brand for that individual.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, if I can, I just, that's the big shift. I mean, we're moving into what we call the experience revolution. And if I can just highlight it for you, right, it says that at the experience, the center of the axis, right? We used to think it was about the brand or the company or the retailer. Now it's actually the consumer gets to stand at the axis point. And if you don't, believe me, then, the reality is, once they decide that they had a good experience, they're going to turn around and share it socially with the world off of their devices. And we hope that they're sending out a positive, strong message about this place they just visited or the product they just purchased, right? And spread it in a positive light. If they spread it in a negative light, then we probably have some issues, right, that we've got to resolve very quickly, or that word gets out and we can't control it as a brand.
I love that. And Sumit, if we take that individual experience now and we make it, we look at the way the stores and the chains have changed over the past 10 years, right? At one point, it was all about them being the same, and now it's about them localizing. What are some of the things that you're seeing in that space, Sumit?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, great question. 10 years ago, if you walked into a store in downtown Dallas versus McKinney versus Prosper versus Frisco, the brand would essentially be carrying the same inventory, right? You walked in, it was the same store. Now it's been the result of something that Brian said. You have to ask the customer, a very, very grassroots kind of an undertaking. And now the different stores in different areas carry completely different inventory, right? You walk into a convenience store in Frisco now, for example, you're going to see something like wasabi peas, right? I bring up this example, something you would not think about 10 years ago. But a store somewhere else might not carry wasabi peas, right? But it is a representation of the demographic in that area. And so we're trying to mirror the customer's needs for that specific area and give them what they desire, right? A consumer that goes in and buys wasabi peas and they find it at a store, they're probably going to buy it again and tell their friends, hey, did you know that convenience store A sells wasabi peas? And they probably don't know that. But and by word of mouth, very kind of grassroots, right? The word gets out. And it becomes a very, very personal experience where the customer goes, for wasabi peas, I go here or I go there. And so that zero moment of truth, which is really building the trust of the end user, you have to trust the brand. You have to trust that the price is going to be right and that the product is going to be there, right? But it is, once again, a very, very individual thing tailored to the specific person, right? And we have to take each and every person and give them the experience that they want. And the industry has certainly reacted to that by increasing the breadth of offerings, by kind of looking at what the specific demographics are and how can we tailor the merchandising. So revolutionary compared to 10 years ago.
I love it. Real quick, just as we go to wrap up, one of the things that a lot of people will say is, all right, this is all fine and good conversation, right? But what can I do now, right? What is something that I can do to help reinvent that experience, to Imagineer, right? What is it that we can do? So Brian, could you give me 2 or 3 things that somebody could do today? They consider, if you think about it in terms of dream big and start small, what are 2 or 3 things they could do to dream big, right? And what are 2 or 3 things they could do to start small?
Well, first of all, again, as we said earlier, focus on the consumer here. Make sure that it's about them, not about you. There are just too many companies in the world that get lost in that translation, and if it's not about them now, today, it will be about them tomorrow. So here's your chance, right, to realign. Again, probably the biggest message that I'd like to share maybe here in parting is, it just kind of dawned on me that, we're talking about predominantly here convenience stores. And what amazes me is that in today's world, that's what we're all wanting out of all of our engagements with many of our retailers. We want convenience. We just want it so easy, whether we're shopping in the store or, as we all know now, it's beyond just the pickup, right? What else? We're talking about home delivery. Now, I think there was some talk about maybe even 7-Eleven delivering some Slurpees. Is that right? I don't know. Maybe that was something I picked up on. But here's the funny part is, we're using companies like Amazon to deliver to our doorstep, or Walmart just launched a new Walmart Plus, I think, program, all about this home delivery piece. And they're all trying to get the ultimate convenience. They're talking about convenience. Well, we're talking about an industry that has the title, right, that owns convenience. We don't think about Walmart or Amazon as convenience store directly right today, even though we know that they work and play in that marketplace some. More importantly, the convenience market is owned by this industry, and it should keep it. And don't let anybody take it from you, right? You have the ultimate opportunity to deliver the ultimate convenience to your community, to your people, and know that you have that right. But you're going to have to keep it, and you're going to have to own that convenience. And so think about all the ways that you can engage and provide convenient products and services to your community, and they'll give back. But you have to go and get in their shoes and think about their world. Hopefully that kind of answers your question, Mike.
It does. It helps a lot. I appreciate it. Hey, Sumit, same thing, same question to you, right? As far as earning and gaining their trust, what are a couple of things that they could do to deliver on their brand experience and make sure, right? Is it as simple as just making sure the temperature is right, or where do they go, right? How do they start?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Mike. Obviously, those are the basics, right? Temperature has to be right, equipment has to be running, store has to be clean. These are the fundamentals that are even more important today than they ever were, right? But at the end of the day, the convenience store is part of a community, right? They are a community store, really. The owners, the franchisees, the store managers, their kids go to the same schools as the consumers, as the guests, right? And we have to be able to take advantage of that, right? We have to do a better job knowing our customers' names by offering merchandising that is reflective of the demographics that is in that specific area. But we have to make it personal, right? At the end of the day, it is a personal shopping experience, right? We're trying to get away from the old mindset of what a traditional convenience store was to more of a retail experience, right? It is a transition, but we want them to come in and shop. This was not traditionally the MO of the C-store industry, right? It was a grab-and-go industry. Now we want them to come in, to spend more time in the store, look around, find the wasabi peas, for example, right? We want you to look around. We want to stimulate your senses. And the longer we can keep them in the store, obviously, the higher the probability is of us making a sale, right? So how do we do that? We have to get them in the store. And if they're not coming into the store, then we have to do a better job providing the products to them by delivery, by curbside, whatever the case might be, but making it a personal experience so that we can deliver on our promise to the end user.
I love it. Great way to end. Sumit, Brian, thank you guys so much. And to our guests and audience that are paying attention, a couple of things that I would just ask you to remember as you go forward, right? When you're thinking about Imagineering your store and creating unique, intentional experience for your customer or guest, right, is start with them. It starts with the individual. That notion of dream big, right, and start small. So make small changes today. One of the things that I love that Sumit was talking about was just go look at your bathroom, right, and go down to a micro level. Look at where somebody touches, where they don't touch. That's an easy thing to do. It's an easy thing to miss. And then what Brian was talking about in terms of, hey, make it easier for your customer. Make it easier for your guests. Be where they want to be. That may be digital. That may be well beyond the curb, right? It may be out at the island, and it may be inside the store, but be where they want to be. With that, thank you guys so much. Looking forward to staying in touch, and you guys have a great day. Sumit, Brian, we'll see you guys.